Whoa, man, what technology, who'd like it, eh? Hopefully this should have come back up for everyone now. Hey guys, hopefully you can hear me now if you're starting to join. My sincere apologies for that little mess. Oh, right, we got the sound. Man, so sorry about that, guys. Yeah, I did a Windows update on this machine today, and just fired everything back up and thought, yeah, this would be cool. And didn't realize that Windows had reallocated all the sound devices, so OBS was looking for a device that wasn't there anymore. So real sorry about that, guys. I really should have checked after doing a Windows update. So that's on me. Yeah, so a bit of an impromptu one tonight. I was sort of sitting around hacking away getting this firmware out the door, or getting it ready, and chatting with one of the guys I was working with around a potential bug that I was seeing. Richard, if you're on. And figured, you know, he said he wouldn't mind tuning in, so I thought, why not? I'll kick this off and we can all have a chat as we go. So this is a bit of a slightly different time, sort of 12 hours out from what I usually do. So hopefully it might catch a help out for a bit of a different audience, which would be pretty cool. Okay, so what I'm doing tonight is just working through, like I said, getting the next firmware release out the door. Now, Richard actually pinged me earlier and just said, hey, I think I found a bit of a bug with the composite log and the tooth logging. It's sort of giving a bit of a blip, so I'm just working my way through that now. I found the bug. It's not too difficult to resolve that one, so I'm just going through working on that at the moment. Look, this is not going to be a very overly structured stream or anything, but I'll just be working away, and feel free to fire off any questions and have a bit of a chat, I guess. So, all right, we're just going to close that one down, and I'll show you what's going on at the moment. Whoop. guys. Cool. So what I was working on was in the comms code. We've got these two functions to send a tooth log and to send a composite log. And these actually share the log, but they send it a little bit differently. And what was happening was whenever these pages were getting sent back to Tuner Studio, there was a little blip happening on the fuel and ignition outputs. And basically that was due to these logs, which are quite a bit bigger than the current status log, filling up the available serial buffer. So what I've done is, much like in the main comms code, I've just put a check in here now, and I've done it in the tooth log, but not in the composite log yet. So all I'm doing is saying, checking how much of the serial buffer is remaining for a write. If it's less than 4, which is the amount of data we're about to try and send, then we exit out of this whole transmission. We set some flags to say there's an in progress send going on, and we also store where we're up to in the send in the transmission. So all I'm going to do is copy that down here. Here. So what time is it for everyone who's watching on? We're hopefully getting a little bit of a different audience to what I'd normally get. It's about 8:30 p.m. where I am here in Australia. As you can tell by the fact that I'm wearing a beanie, it is absolutely freezing here. So I have just confirmed, I've got the scope running beside me here. I have just confirmed that the tooth log fix worked when sending tooth logs, and I was no longer getting the issue there. So I'm just going to replicate it for the composite log and verify that it does the same thing. Saturday morning, Saturday afternoon. Yeah, cool. Hope everyone's having a good weekend then. This is in the main Speeduino loop here, right actually at the very, very beginning of the loop. We're just doing a check here to make sure that none of these are actually in progress. So do a check and say, okay, if the composite log send is still in progress, then we're going to check what the available write buffer is. We're not going to recommence sending that immediately. We're going to wait for that write buffer to ease up a little bit. Now, the default Arduino write buffer is 64 bytes. So we're going to wait for it to ease up to at least halfway. Yeah, you didn't miss much at the start, Mr. Mark 1 Astronaut. I cocked up my audio settings thanks to a Windows update. So there wasn't much going on at the start. I was talking away to myself. I am still going to be doing the stream tomorrow morning, or in about 12 hours from now. Yep. Wow, Mitch, 5:30. Gonna say you're pretty keen. Now I go back to bed if I were you. Work's not worth it. Alright. So if we've dropped out the bottom here, it means that we got to the end of the for loop with no issues, and we just set the the send in progress to be false. So I think that should be just about everything we need there. Why is that not being picked up, I wonder? All right, let's flick that over to the unit, to the board on my bench here, and we'll see if that works. So this firmware's been a long time coming, this one. It's been about 3 months between releases, which is a bit longer than normal, but there's a lot in there. And it obviously has required a bit of testing, so it'll be good to get out the door. Hopefully you can all have a play with it and see what new features are there. That's interesting. Okay. Yeah. So that's just complaining that I didn't change this call here. So all I'm doing is adding an offset at the start, so we can send the composite log from a certain offset. Now, when we begin it, we obviously want to send it from an offset 0, but later on we'll send it from a different offset if the buffer was full. So we should just update these as well. Ah, Mark One Astronaut, that's so awesome. Thank you for that. I don't do these streams to make money, or not really, but I do really appreciate it, guys. It's fantastic to have that support. All right, that should work a little better. Now, unfortunately, you guys probably won't be able to see whether this works or not, because I need to look over here at my scope screen. Yeah, so Philip, what I'm doing at the moment is just working through an issue that somebody called out to me around a bit of a hiccup that was happening when the high-speed loggers, so the tooth logger and the composite logger, were sending their data. And what I've traced that down to is the fact that because they're quite large logs that get sent, the serial transmit buffer on the Arduino was filling up, and it starts blocking the code. So I'm just adding a check here to make sure that if the serial buffer does fill, we don't sit there waiting for it and do nothing. We exit back to the main screen, wait for the buffer to empty a little bit, and then keep sending the rest of the log. Yeah, look, Kim, there's mixed feelings around how frequently we should do these updates, or how frequently I should get these out. It's very much the open source philosophy of release early, release often. You find bugs faster, you find issues faster, and you get new features out to people quicker. So there's a lot of good reasons to release fairly often, but it does create a bit of overhead. Oops. In terms of, we just need to load the new INI file here. In terms of getting these releases out the door and writing them up and bug testing them and all those sorts of things. So let me just load that new INI. So Ruben, no, I have a full-time job. This is just something I work on the side. I would love to get to a point where this is my full-time gig and I can work on it all the time. Speeduino sales are building at a much quicker rate than I ever really expected them to. But alas, it's not yet at the point where I can quit my job and work on this full-time or anything. I do have a Patreon, but I'm slowly phasing out of Patreon. I'm going to move to GitHub sponsors because the fees that Patreon charge are a bit exorbitant, and that they've got some real privacy type issues in my experience. So GitHub sponsors is going to be the way to go, I think, going forward. It's interesting, we're not getting any data from the composite logger there now. Let's try the tooth logger. Okay, that's working fine. Oh, hang on, that is actually working. It's just zoomed right in, is it? Have I ever worked on Dash head unit COM protocols? Nope, nothing ever like that, I'm afraid. Can't help with that at all. That's giving some really interesting results there. There's some pulses, but not really what I would expect to see here. What products can I buy from you? I see a merch, but I would buy my Speedy from you for your work. Yeah. So my Speedy store is just the one at speeduino.com. And any of the official resellers that are listed on that site will get some funds back to myself as well. So we've got some really great partners there in terms of resellers for Speeduino. Let's see what's going on. That all looks like it should be fine. Can't see anything there that would worry me. All right, that's fine. We might move on and I'll come back and have another play with that a little bit later. I really like how Speeduino looks in Tuner Studio. Have you haven't had any issues using Tuner Studio as an interface? Tuner Studio is an interesting one. It can be difficult to work with sometimes because it was specifically written for Megasquirt, and that's something that we do need to keep in mind. But for the most part, once you get the protocol down, it's pretty easy to work with, and it's an amazingly powerful tool. It looks a little bit ugly compared to some of the products out there, but in terms of its capabilities, it's as good as any tuning package I've ever used, which is why people say, you know, why don't you write your own front end and make it open source and all that sort of thing. It's, well, I don't have the time to do it, and I don't have the interest to do it, if I'm brutally honest. It's just such a great mature product that I think it's something that I'm happy to continue using. Okay, so what I'm going to move on to next is one other thing that somebody called out, which annoys me a little bit, but was around the use of this utils file. This on the STM32 world has caused a naming clash, so I'm just going to do some file renaming here. I think not the most exciting thing in the world, but we're going to do. What do we do? In fact, I'm going to do it the easy way. Somebody did create a pull request for this, and let's just merge that in. I wasn't super happy with the naming on the pull request, but we can live with it, I think. I do like to just go through and have a bit of a look at the pull requests that are in the system before I do any release, and just make sure that it's sort of it's what I expect it to be and that there's no real issues there. There's nothing last minute that's come in that's problematic. Yeah, so this is all this is doing. This pull request is renaming the utils files to Speeduino utils, which is horribly ugly in my opinion, but it will solve this problem fairly quickly. Yeah, Tuna Studio, I mean, it is a bit ugly, but it is what it is. It's not the end of the world being the ugliest thing. Okay. What I might do instead, I really don't like the name Speeduino utils. I really doesn't sit well with me. I might just rename this instead to utilities. That might work. Like I said, I'd prefer not to have to do this at all. But there was a file in the STM32 space that was also called utils.h and hadn't been set up right, so it was appearing in the user space, the user header space, which is not great, and it probably shouldn't be how it's set up, but that's how it is. Callisto-san, thank you so much. That's awesome. Now, I apologise if there is a bit of latency on the stream today. I couldn't figure out a way to go live with OBS and then change the stream latency, so it defaults to the slightly slower one. Now, where else is this file used? Yeah, all the serial streams are at 115.200. Command handler. So not the most exciting thing in the world here, just working through, figuring out where that file is actually used, and just going through and renaming it. Comms. And then I think we are going to get this firmware out the door. There is just, yeah, there is a huge amount of cool stuff in this new firmware, I must admit. It's a good one to get out there. All right, so that's working fine now. I'm just going to make a couple of commits here and push those in. Oh, Callisto, you don't have to do that, man. That's so cool. Thank you. I really do appreciate it. Don't suppose if I know the 350Z CAN protocol at all. Ooh, it's not something I've ever looked at, I'm afraid. CAN is only just something, believe it or not, that I'm getting into at the moment. It's not something I've really had a lot to do with. I've sort of steered a little bit clear with. I mean, I've played with it with those sorts with Arduinos and things, but for the most part, I haven't really toyed around with it that much. Okay. We'll just push this all in together. I'll be lazy. Add TX buffer check for tooth and composite logs. So I just want to get this particular change in there. All right, and what we need to start doing for the firmware now is a couple of tedious little things, but we go through and we update the COM signatures to match. So the code sends through a signature version through to Tuner Studio, which tells it, you know, how to match up against the INI file and everything like that. And we run dev signatures throughout the development cycle. So these are the first thing that gets changed. We just pull those out. We just rename them to what we would expect to see. And we make the corresponding change in the INI file as well. I'll upload that to the board. Now, assuming this works and there's no issues with that signature, all I do is work through updating the base tunes to make sure that they've got everything set. Now, in the updates.ino file, I should say, this runs a routine on the system startup that says, okay, are we currently on the latest firmware version, or have we just updated? And it stores the version in its EEPROM that it was running on last. So when an existing ECU fires up with this new firmware, it'll run this routine for the first time. It'll say, I've got EEPROM data version 14 in my EEPROM stored. However, the latest version is actually 15. Look at the top. Oh, and I made these changes earlier before I started streaming. So current data version is 15. And so when it fires up and it realizes it's on a slightly older version, it'll go through and do some big updates, including redoing the calibration tables, which have been a huge big change in this version of the firmware. They've changed significantly. We set some protections up and turn them off. By default, generally when a new feature is added, the update routine will go through and just turn it off, just for a safety thing, so it's not automatically engaged with someone who's just updated the firmware and cause all sorts of confusion. We do the same for the water and meth injection. Same for the programmable outputs, set all of those to off. We change or just set some of the legacy options here for the multiply map option. And we set the new the acceleration enrichment mode back to the original mode. So we force it to be the original mode. If people want to change it to use the alternative mode that was added in this firmware, they can do that, but by default it will stick to the old one. All of this is just to make sure that people's existing tunes will keep working right when they update. We write all that to EEPROM, and then we set the new version of the EEPROM data. Okay. So if we go into Tuner Studio now, we need to update the INI file. And you can see here that we've currently got 2020-06 dev, which was the last version that we had of this. And we're going to update it now to the latest version, which will be 2020-08. And if all's worked, it'll connect to the Arduino, no worries. If there's a signature problem, it will tell us all about it. So there we go, and we've connected fine. So in that regard, everything should be fine with the signature. And that basically means we're at the point of I think, being ready to do this release. Let me just have a final look at any pull requests that are out there. Oh. So there's a lot of pull requests here that I will be grabbing as soon as we start the new development cycle, and that's what I'm going to be talking about on the stream in about 11 hours from now or so. But for now, there were a few that came in last minute, and I just wasn't quite ready to pull them in for this cycle, but they will make it in for the next cycle. The only one that might be a small one that I can look at would be this. Yeah, so this adds the option to view these pressures in bar. It's a fairly harmless addition, this one, but I really hate that it's using the project options in Tuner Studio, and I'm really trying to phase those out. So if you've ever gone into settings in Tuner Studio, you can see there's a number of settings here. These aren't reflected on the ECU themselves. They're simply changing the way that that Tuner Studio works. I'm trying to phase them out and not use them as much if possible. I don't really like the way that they muddle the water, and they're a bit of an old-fashioned way of doing things within Tuner Studio. So I might leave that bar setting out for now. Okay, what else did I want to do? What I'm going to just do next is open the base Speeduino tune. Unfortunately, it's a little bit cumbersome, but we have to update all of the Speeduino tunes themselves before we can do before I can do a new release. And that's so if somebody grabs the latest or the new firmware and they want to grab a bass tune, they can do that, and it won't have any conflicts or anything like that. It'll be the latest version. So if we fire up Speeduino, we'll see that it's expecting a 2020-05 firmware, which is the last official release. It's probably also got the wrong COM port here. It does. So what's going to happen here is it's going to fire up and say that we've got a signature mismatch. Your Speeduino is using firmware 2020-08. However, the project serial signature is 05, and all we need to do is update the ECU definition. Now, Tuner Studio will actually go online and look for these, but because we haven't made the release yet, it won't be able to find it. Ordinarily, it will search through the Speeduino servers. They're now configured within Tuner Studio's backend, and it will pull those straight off the Speeduino.com server. But as we haven't actually made the release, that file isn't there. So we just need to give it the new file. Now the number of warnings, it's probably just around array sizes, which is usual.
Any ideas?
I'm just going to let it update the the settings with the controller, just so they're in sync. Now it's saying a couple of things. Array size doesn't match, and that's fine. This is because the arrays that we had have now been used in the new firmware version, so they will have changed. A couple of things I just wanted to check here. Oh, I know, one thing I meant to change actually, and it's only a very, very small thing, but in this menu here, I wanted to change that from being limiters to being engine protection, because that's what it is now. So, I just wanted to change that. Very small change, but it was bugging me. If we reload the INI, we'll see that it should pop up there now. Engine protection. Okay, so those are all sane settings, except we're going to turn that one on, so to make sure we've got a rev limiter. Just going to go through and look at all of the things essentially that have been added in this new firmware, and make sure that they've got sane settings in this base firmware that we're going to use. So we look at the water and meth injection, and we see that it's turned off, and that's exactly what we want. The table here has some pretty bogus values in it. So what I'm just going to do is turn that on and just fix these values up a little bit. Oh, they don't look too bad actually. They were just displaying badly for me, but that's fine. That's not a problem. I'm going to look at the programmable outputs here and make sure they should be all disabled now, because we did that in the firmware, and they are indeed all disabled. Cool, that's all good. What else have we got that's new? VSS, I'll make sure that that's all set okay, because there were a couple of changes to that this month, and that all looks fine. We've had the fuel temp correction added, and that's based on the flex readings, so we need to turn that on. You can see that we've got a nice new fuel temp correction table. Now that one's not terrible values, but let's just update them to be something a bit more sensible. Off. This is all a little bit tedious, I know, but it's unfortunately just what we need to work through for whenever there's a new firmware, just to make sure it's a smooth experience for people. It's all fine. Should be Barrow by default. And otherwise, I think that is looking pretty good. Anything I've missed here? No, I think that all looks fine. I do have some notes that I was throwing together on all the changes that I've put in, or that have gone in for this firmware. Let me just have a look at those and make sure I haven't missed anything. Fuel and oil pressure inputs, of course, that was an obvious one. So yeah, they should both be turned off by default, which is good. Just make sure some of these closed loop options are off. Yep, that's all fine. Yeah, cool. I think we're good to go. I think that's everything we need. So once we've got all of that updated, we simply save that tune as, and I put it into the Speeduino firmware folder. What do I want if I can use my brain? And we've got a whole bunch of bass tunes here. Can actually get rid of that one. I'll remove that file, I think. We just overwrite that one. And that's good to go. So we've got a bass tune there. I'll just do a bass tune for the MX5 boards as well. Just so when somebody grabs those, it'll all be fine as well. So what's everyone most looking forward to in this particular firmware, if you've seen any parts of it? So again, we're just getting this update ECU definition, that's fine. It'll be fine. Yeah, we'll just set that to this board again. Yeah, programmable outs are going to be a big one. I was having a play around with those myself just before, just doing a basic shift light, and they are really, really useful once you start playing with them and you realize how useful they can be. They're pretty cool. For those who hadn't seen them, the programmable outputs here are basically generic outputs. So we can say, okay, we've got 8 different rules that we can set in place. We can have a rule that says, okay, pin, I'm going to go pin 50 because I happen to know that one's not used. We can give it a name. We can say when it's active, it'll be high. We can have 1 or 2 conditions, and we can mix them together with and or XOR conditions. But if we've just got one condition, we can simply say something like, hey, we can have a warning light. If our coolant gets above, let's say, 130 degrees, that output will go high, and we can have a warning light pop up or something like that. They're pretty powerful in terms of what's available with these. To set it, something as simple as a shift light, we simply change that to RPM. We say, hey, if that's greater than, let's say, 6500, then that output will go high, and boom, we've got a shift light. We can hook it up to an LED, we can hook it up to a lamp, whatever we like. So that is a really useful one. It's been a great addition, that one. I'm just going to disable that rule again. Ooh. Ooh, Tuner Studio's got all confused. That's interesting. That's better. That's better. No, that's fine. And again, all of this stuff should just be turned off, which it is. And this is the sign that you've done a good job on your on the updates file, is that all of this stuff is good already. It's all okay. else I'm forgetting? I'll make sure those are turned off, which they are. Ooh, that's interesting. Reference. Cool. Beautiful. So again, I'm just going to save that tune as a bass tune. Oh, dearie me. Tuner Studio is getting all confused. So I'll probably go through, and in fact I will go through a little bit later and just update the rest of those bass tunes. I won't all bore you too much with that now. But that is all good to go there. Just shut him down. So what I typically do at this point is make another commit to say, okay, what are we? August 20 signatures and bass tunes, and that's normally the commit that I always look for to know when I've cut off one firmware release and I'm ready to start the next one. All we've got in this is, again, we've made that little change, but we've changed the signature here from 06 dev to 08, done the same in comms, and we've updated the bass tunes. Commit that. I'll push that up. So most of you, if you've used Speeduino for a little bit, will be familiar with the Speedy Loader tool. That needs to get, or that's probably the next thing that needs to get updated with the latest firmware. So what we do to get that working is we grab the actual compiled firmware itself. So from within our project directory, we have where Platform.io puts its files, .pio, and we have a look at build, mega, and we'll have a file here called firmware.hex, and that's the actual compiled firmware file that gets sent to the board. What's the Git program app that I'm using here? This is just literally GitHub's desktop application, GitHub for Windows in this case. You can just get it from there, from direct from GitHub. They have the same app for Mac and Linux and everything. There are a bunch of different desktop GitHub or Git apps out there, but I found that the GitHub one is fine for everything I need. It's pretty basic. It's nice to look at. Easy to work with. So what I need to do now is just copy up the firmware file, so the hex file that I mentioned here, as well as the INI file. Both of those need to go up to the speeduino.com server so Speedy Loader can function. So what I'm going to do is just log in here. I'm just going to hide the details that I used there for a minute. Bear with me while I just grab my password. There's a lot of different elements to these releases just to make everything neat and simple. So it is a little bit tedious to do. Okay, I've logged on to the Speeduino server here now. Now in the FW folder, in fact, I can bring this up and show it to you how this works. It's not rocket science, I must admit. So if I go to, and anyone can do the same thing here, speeduino.com/FW for firmware. You'll get a listing of all of the INI files of all the versions that are available on SpeedyLoader. Oh, thank you so much for that donation. I really appreciate that, man. I'm really glad to hear people are enjoying the streams. This one is pretty relaxed. There's not much going on in this one. It's just me working away. The other ones I try to do a little bit more preparation on, just so they're a little bit more interesting. But I'm just thrilled that people are actually interested in watching and seeing this stuff. Okay, so we've got all the INI files there that SpeedyLoader uses. We've got a file called versions, which is dead simple. It's simply a listing of all the available versions, and SpeedyLoader checks this file when it starts up. And we also have the binary directory, so we've got all the hex files there as well. So all we do is basically just upload our new version here. Where are we? So we're in this the firmware directory here. So we want to grab this speeduino.ini file, which is on our local system, and we'll move that over. It's just going to copy. And we need to rename that to 2020-08, which is going to be this firmware version. Callisto, when you accept my anti-lag PR, when did that one come through? I had just a flood of pull requests come through in the last week. I swear everyone was saving their pull requests until I decided not to take any more pull requests for this release. It hasn't made it in for this one, but I'll certainly look at it for the next release. Okay, we'll look at the hex file as well. So this is just the file that I showed you before, firmware.hex, the one that Platform.io builds. Early 2019. Oh man, my apologies then. I've completely missed it. I thought that must have been a recent one. I'll have to go back and have a look. My apologies there, Callisto-san. It's way outdated. That's okay. Anything that gets outdated like that, I typically won't pull through as a straight release or as a straight pull request. I'll typically grab out, find the functional section in there, pull it out, and then just use that section rather than trying to update it to the latest code. It just tends to be a bit easier that way. Okay, so we've got a hex file, we've got our INI file. The only other thing that we need to do is, if we look at a copy of SpeedyLoader here, If we look at the available firmwares, we need to update this list so our new file appears in this. We do that simply by editing this file here. Now I normally do this on my Mac, so hopefully it'll all work okay on here. But all I do at this top is add the new version. Save that, and it should upload the new version. So in the background, we can see if we refresh this directory on the server now, that we've now got 2020-08 there. We've got the 2020-08 INI file. The versions file should have been updated, which it has. And if we reload Speedy Loader, which will fire up eventually. Sorry, I just realised I've got a development version of Speedy Loader on here, but that's all right. Fired back up, and we've now got this. Woohoo! Terrific. Now, there's a couple more bits and pieces that need to come into here. If you look at any of these firmwares and you actually go firmware details, you can get a few firmware notes. You can see the details of what went into that firmware. 2020-05, and this is pulled from the releases page on GitHub. So if I go into here and look at the latest release, 2020-05, and it's got the full description here, that's where Speedy Loader is actually pulling its description from. So we need to create a release on GitHub, is the other part that we need to do. For that, I need to finish writing up a big description of what goes into it, and that will take me a little while, and it's probably not the most exciting thing in the world. I have made a start on it. Where are we? There's the start of the notes for this version. You can see the major features that have been added there, but I need to add a little bit more commentary. But that won't take me too long. I won't run through it on the stream tonight because that's as boring as hell. But this will then just get updated into GitHub, and we do that by saying we want to edit the release. We want to make a new release. Draft a new release. Okay, call it 2020-08. We just simply say August 2020 firmware, and I would dump the description into here. And when I publish this, and I won't publish it now, that description then gets pulled into Speedy Loader, and everything sort of just works. So that's pretty much it, guys. I'll make an announcement on Facebook soon, again with just the description of the firmware that I put in, or that I write up. I may do it tonight, I may do it tomorrow morning when I'm a little bit more awake. I will be doing another stream in about 11 hours time, just to run through the start of a new development cycle and how that works. And I'll start looking at all the big pull requests that I was talking about before and saying, hey, what's actually critical here and what's not. If you want to jump in and play with the firmware straight away, it will be on Speedy Loader right now. If you fire up your Speedy Loader at your end, you'll see that version has been added now, and you can get straight in and play with it. I'll tidy up these last few bits and pieces either tonight or tomorrow morning and get an announcement out. But really, that's it. That's how a firmware comes together, and that's the sort of the late stages of how it all falls into place. Okay, I'll probably end it there for tonight, guys. I'll see you all in about 11 hours time if you want to join that stream as well, bright and early for a Sunday morning for myself. But hopefully a few more people have been able to attend this one that haven't been able to in the past due to the different time zone, and hopefully it's been interesting. All right, guys, have a good night, have a good day, have a good morning.